Kayani as you stay home and stay safe and enjoy the session. Gopi, all yours.
Thank you. Can you guys see the screen from my end?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, for a lot of people who are attending this webinar, I'm sure you might have a question about what is River Nila, where is it? So for a lot of Malayalis, River Nila is not just a river, it's not just a destination, it's more about a feeling. It's an emotion that drives them, it nurtured them. Even the father of Malayalam literature was born on the banks of the river. So there's a lot of passion and romance that we relate to this particular river. And what is striking for a lot of us about the river is that this is a very small river. It's just about 250 kilometers long, out of which 50 kilometers travels through Tamil Nadu. And then it passes through Malappuram, it passes through Palakkad, Trichy, and it joins the Arabian Sea in the port town called Ponnani. Even the name Ponnani is like very interesting because it means a river that carries gold. So this is a small stretch closer to Ponnani where the Tirur River joins the River Nila. And I'll just take you through some of the stories in the sense, like in 2005, Outlook Traveler, they featured our little river, our 250 kilometer long river, among one of the best 5 river journeys in India. Just imagine being featured along with Ganges, along with Sanskar, Brahmaputra, Jhelum and all. And then we started to get a lot of features being done in guidebooks like Footprint, where they featured River Nila as a destination. And then came in 2018, National Geographic Traveler in India. They dedicated 9 pages to talk about River Nila. So this was the particular edition where they feature about River Nila, all the cultural aspects of it. And now for those people who are curious about where this place is, if you know the map of Kerala, you look at those 3 arrows on your right side of the screen, you see Malappuram, you see Palakkad and Trichy. These are 3 areas that are majorly influenced by the river. Now, if you look on the map on your left side, you realize that there are 3 airports that are accessible. Like you can land either in Kozhikode at Calicut, you can land in Coimbatore in Tamil Nadu, or Cochin. So between these 3 airports lies our place, which is almost accessible between 1 to 2 hours, either by road or by train. Now, if you look at the blue line on your left side, those are the major railway stations that are accessible when you decide to travel to Nila. And this is more or less the river, the flow. Back home, we also call the river Nila as Bharatapura. As it's a kind of a tongue twister for a lot of people, we decided to call the poetic name Nila. Now, few aspects that are super special and unique about River Nila is, this is an image from Silent Valley. A lot of you might already know that Silent Valley is part of the Western Ghats, which is one of the top 10 biodiverse regions in the world, listed by the IUCN. And this Silent Valley happens to be in the district of Palakkad. And you might also have heard that there is a geographic phenomenon called the Palakkad Gap. It's a very unique geographical structure where the entire stretch of Western Ghats has a gap of about 30 to 32 kilometers, a long stretch through which a lot of communities came from all across India. Not just India, even communities from Yemen, they came through this place and settled. And also it's not only the culture and communities who came through the Palakkad Gap. If you look at the weather in Palakkad and neighboring area, it has so much of influence because the hot weather from Tamil Nadu enters through these places that it influences our monsoon in a big way. And how do you explore Nila? There are so many ways, like you could travel by train, you can go for soft trekking in places like Niliambadi in different parts of Western Ghats, you can take a stroll in places like Patambi, like this in the river. And this is actually my village where I come from. It's a place called Tirur. where we have this beautiful bridge and a small river. It's about 28 kilometers long, where you can go on boat ride in this area. Or if you, similar to Munnar and Wayanad, we have fabulous tea estates up there in the western, in Niliambati. Or you can join local communities to plant trees to set up the travelers forest. These are also images from some of the soft treks we do in partnership with the forest department as part of a conservation initiative. And this is one of our most popular train journey between Shornur and Nilambur, one of the most stunning views. And or you can join a lot of families in their local celebration, especially during this time. Unfortunately, because of COVID-19, all the summer festivals are out of gear, but this is the time normally all the villages around across the Nila basin will get activated, and that's an amazing time to travel. And well, of course, you can have a glass of toddy when you travel. And what I want to do is to take you through a small journey about what makes this place really exciting. Nila is known for a lot of performing arts. Kathakali, you might have heard, you might have seen. There are art forms like Kudiyatam, Nangyar Kooth, etc., which is like about 2,000 years old, where UNESCO has branded them, has nominated Kudiyatam as one of the oldest dance drama in the world. That is an instrument called Mirava, played by our maestro. And when it comes to an art form like Kathakali, it's very normal that for people who travel to Cochin or different tourism zones, it's very normal for them to see all these performances, but we hardly see the players who make this really happen. Who are the people who make these accessories? I'll just take you through a very small video just to give you an idea about how the accessories are made. These are all part and parcel of the travel experiences we provide. What he's saying is when you travel along Nila, like, you know, these are the kind of journeys and experiences, immersive experiences that you can get a sense of, because you are interacting with the local communities to understand. And as part of Responsible Tourism Initiative, what we have designed is that any artist who is spending their time needs to be financially compensated. You know, we spend a lot of time with these people and they are wasting their time, and it has an opportunity cost. So while it is very holistic and they are volunteering, it's important that the local communities start to earn out of this experiential tourism initiative. And then this tourism per se is not only for the tourists. What about the local people? How many of us who are from the region do enjoy cultural performances like this? How many students get an opportunity for something like this? And similar to the performing arts or Kathakali, we have something based on our satire called Autumn Tullal. performing art forms. Like what happened in 1950s is that soon after the independence, when the royalties were not in a position to support traditional and classical art forms, there were a lot of worries about how do we sustain all these art forms. So one of our greatest poets, Vallathol, on the banks of the river Nila, set up the Kerala Kalamandalam, where right now the Kerala Tourism is actually running a program called Day with the Masters, where you can walk through the classes very quietly and silently without affecting what is going on there. And with the support of storytellers from our side, you can understand various art forms that are being taught. And it's an amazing place for interaction with the host as well as the travelers. Now, one thing that is so unique about the River Nila is its music tradition, whether it's percussion or whether it is the voiceovers when it comes to Kathakali music. The variety that you see in different villages are just mind-blowing. Now, Panjavadyam, for example, is a culmination of about 5 different musical instruments, like what you are seeing here, idakya. And what I want to introduce you is, like, though there are so many villages which have different schools of music, there is one particular initiative that I really want you guys to know more about. It's called Sobanam School of Panjavadyam, which is based in a place called Edapal in Malappuram district, where they are actually giving training to more than 800 plus students, whether irrespective of your caste, irrespective of the religion or gender. There are women players in these places, and this is all breaking how the conventional traditional systems were.
So he started, in the sense, with the help of the lady groups. The ladies are doing this work now.
And martial arts, the Kalaripayattu is again one of the major attraction of the region. And Arun, when he speaks, will be talking more about the impact of martial arts in the region, especially in the background of Mamangam festival. And then the folk tradition of the region is again super rich. This is an art form called Pudanantira. Again, you can see all these people walking around our villages, especially post-harvest during the summer festivals. And this is an art form called Pulluvan Paatu. Originally, we believe these are the people who came from the erstwhile Indraprastha, the present Delhi, came and settled on the banks of this river. And then we have an amazing group called Wiley, a folklore group who have set up India's first bamboo music troupe. And then if you look at various communities, there are people who came from Tamil Nadu, from Andhra, from Karnataka, who settled here. And even now, they speak their own languages in our villages. minimum at least 5 to 6 hours you need before you break them. Yeah, so that was pretty much about some of the experiences that you can have on the banks of this river. And now I want to introduce you to Anita Nair. She is one of our most popular writers from the region, who has, as Mrs. Brar was talking about, has been writing inspired with the characters from the area. So let me invite Anita to take over and share her insights about the region.
Hi, can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So my name is Anita Nair and I'm a writer. Now, the story of my association with this river began when I was a child. I grew up in a little suburb about 22 kilometers away from Chennai. And 3 times a year, we traveled to Kerala. And 3 times a year, what we would do is catch a train from Central Station in Chennai and come into Kerala. Now, the first glimpse of Kerala is traditionally the place what we would call as Valayar, which is like the border. However, for me, Kerala wasn't Valayar. There was a particular station called Parli, and it was at that station that you catch a first glimpse of the river. And that was when I would start feeling that I'm actually entering Kerala. To this day, I know of so many people who tell me they get that same feeling. Many people actually go and stand, especially people who don't live in Kerala and you're coming back by train, they go and stand, at the compartment door to try and catch a glimpse of the river. And it makes a kind of huge difference to the way that you feel when you enter the state. It makes you feel like you have just kind of put aside everything behind you and that you are actually entering a place where everything is different. Everything has a different pace to life, and everything is kind of seeped in culture and is seeped in the good things. And the first time they used that slogan, God's own country, for Kerala, I kind of like said, yes, this is it, because it really does give you that feeling, especially if you're a Malayali and you're coming back into Kerala. Now, when I would reach Shornur station, which is where, the station that I would disembark at, and which is where my family home was at that point, the first question my uncle would ask me was there water in the river at Parali? Now, the thing is that, a lot of farmers of that region, especially, farmers who depend on the river for watering their fields and since you're growing paddy, which is a very water intensive crop, water was very crucial. And so on the one hand, there was this whole necessity of knowing if there was enough water in the river to be able to feed the crops. And the other important thing, of course, for me as a child was to know that if there was water in the river, then it meant that when we went to the river, there would be something special happening there. You know, it was like a wonderful playground. It was a place that we would, from my grandmother's house, my cousins and I would walk, which was like about a kilometer away to the river. And we would walk to the river there and spend the entire evening playing in the sand, paddling in the water. And usually there would be an older person who would always have a story about the river. It could be about one of the favorite stories that was touted was that there was these whirlpools in the river, and if you went paddling you could get sucked into a whirlpool, though the water would be like just about 4 feet deep. You could get you could get sucked into a whirlpool, and that could completely, destroy everything that happened in your life. Pretty much you get sucked into a whirlpool, you're dead. So that's what happens. So the river in many ways was like a playground. It was also like a battleground. It was also something that fed the region, not just for the paddy, but for everything else. And I remember one of the things that happened routinely when we went to Kerala was that about 8 kilometers away from Shornur, which is a junction town, a railway junction town, there is this village called Mundakotakurshi. Now that is my ancestral village, and what you're seeing on the screen are images of what Mundakotakurshi looks like. It's surrounded by hills on on all sides, and it's a little valley, and there is nothing much that happens in Mundakotakurshi. It's a very, very agrarian place, and people still live in a way that probably they lived many, many years ago. And one of the interesting things about Mundakotakurshi, or this village, was that it's one of those ancient villages that for no specific reason has survived, and it continues to survive and remain almost unchanged to this day. What you see on the screen is actually a picture. Right at the back, what you see is this little cottage that I live in when I go there. And two of the landmark buildings of Mundakotakurshi are, part of my acreage. So the tiled building that you see is the post office. And one of the jokes that I like to make and tell people is that I must be the only writer who owns a post office. And on the other side of the screen, what you see, the reddish building, is the village library. And if you know Kerala, you'd know there's a very, very active library movement to this day. It may not be what it was once, but it still is something that in small villages, school children and even grown-ups, they habituate the library because it's also like a social gathering place. Now, as a child, when I would come to Mundakotakurshi, there was nothing at all there. There was no electricity, there wasn't a bus route, and the family car which dropped us off there would often have to go back into the garage because of all the dents from all the rocks and all the stones. It got through the journey. It was just a short journey, but it felt like we were going away to the darkest parts of Africa. And so once we got there, everything changed. There was a stillness to the air because, there's no industry, there was no noise. The silence was so kind of amazing that at any given point of time, you would think that something monumental was going to happen. What could be monumental, you would imagine, in a small little village, till you wait for the lights to go off. And then there's nothing at all there. There are no street lights. All you have are little lamps lit within homes. And so if you were to look outside, you would see nothing at all but darkness and the skies, which would be lit up with stars if it was a clear night. And that was the time when people would start talking about various things. There was always this element of having walked into a magical, realistic setting when I would go to Mundakotakurshi, because the stories there would be about ghouls, it would be about yakshis, it would be about magicians, because that region again was pretty much known once upon a time for, not just tantric magic, but also for what is considered occult. And so all of it, you should imagine a young child who comes from not a city, but even a suburb, who finds this place as something that is so mystical that if you have even the smallest of an imagination, it was enough. It would start kind of working its way into that little head and start creating stories. Now, some years ago, almost about 25 years ago, my parents moved back to this village, and I became like a bona fide citizen of this village. And then I started creating a kind of notebook for myself of all the wonderful things that this village, and I would just use this village as a template for several other villages of that region. That was so, there was so many things that was special about this village. So let me start, for instance, with food. Now, as you all must know, that one of the first things that people who come to Kerala do is talk about food. What you see on the screen is the very traditional sadhya, but this is a homemade sadhya. It's not like one of those elaborate ones, but it nevertheless has, if you were to do a quick count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 dishes already on that banana leaf. And this is going to be followed with payasam. And again, we always eat payasam to the accompaniment of papadam. It's this whole thing of like the yin and yang, the balance of salt and sweet. We also have several snacks now. This is called an unniyappam, and it's a deep fried snack. And this is something that children came home from school and had as a tea time snack. This is the much famed putta, and what you eat with it is this kadala, which is basically chana, cooked with coconut and all those things. Another combination is the boiled banana and papadam. Again, we love our papadam. We need papadam in everything that we eat. Okay, now what I'm going to take you through is a sequence of shorts about making a special dish which is called pulienji. And now, one of the interesting things about Malayali cuisine or Valluvanadan cuisine, because that's what this region is called, is that many of our dishes are very season specific. Now, a pulienji is traditionally served at a sadhya, which is that big bada khana kind of thing. And it's made of jaggery, green chili, ginger, green, curry leaves, dried chilies, mustard, and a bit of rice flour. And all of it goes together. I'm just waiting for the slide to move. Yeah, so you see that it's all kind of sauteed together. And then you finally have, this is another dish. Go back to this. And then all of this becomes like a really dense, tangent, pungent, spicy, delicious chutney called the pulienji, and it stays forever. So for instance, when I make it in my house, I make a little jar of it and keep it in the refrigerator. And if there isn't anything, the meal is kind of dull and bland, all I need is a spoonful of this, and it just makes my meal like a mega feast. Now, this is something else called kalan. And this is made out of ripe mangoes, and pretty much everything that we cook has coconut in it. This is made with ripe mangoes, and this is a delicious dish again, which is usually available in Kerala only in the months of March and April. Now, this is a dish called kua. Kua is basically arrowroot. All those Mari biscuits you eat, it's made of arrowroot. Now, we do something else with it. In the month of December, we have a particular festival called Tiruvadira, which is when, women actually take a kind of vow and worship Lord Shiva and worship the goddess Parvati. And the whole idea is to kind of pray for your uh, loved one, as in your husband's well-being. And that day they fast, and then they break the fast with this halwa-like thing, which is made of arrowroot and jaggery, and with little bits of coconut put into it. There's one more dish. So again, we eat it with papadam. Now, there's one more dish that I want to show you. We just move on to the next one. So we have, in the month of April, we have a festival called Bishu, which is our version of the New Year. And what happens is that on Vishu Day, everybody wakes up very early, and we have to see this thing, which is basically a combination of food, fruit, vegetables, gold, everything. So the idea is that whatever you wake up to that day continues to be part of your life for the rest of the year. So one of the dishes that is made then again is a particular dish, which is a steamed dish made using the leaf of the plash tree or the flame of the forest tree. That picture, unfortunately, is not on the screen, but I'm just going to move on to the third segment of why storytelling becomes a very important part of that region, and especially for me. Now, when Gopi was running his presentation, he told you about the festivals, the temple festivals that happen. And these festivals are called Purams. And in the larger places, you have elephants coming in. But in small villages, we have something called Kala Vela, which is basically, this is what you call, which is a Kala. So every region around, every little we in Malayalam, we use a word called Desham, which is pretty much like not even like a taluk, but like a village within a taluk. Every village sends its representative kala or bullock, and there are competitions on which is the most gorgeously and ostentatiously decorated one. So usually, in my village, it happens in the month of February. And there are little customs attached to it, like once the Puram is announced and they put up the flag, then for the next month, nobody from that village should go away and leave home. They need to be in that village till the Puram is over. So a whole lot of things happen. There are a lot of people gathering, there are children having a good time, there are various people come to see it because there's a lot of things happening there. There are these, typically like a mela, but there is music, like there is magnificent percussion ensembles happening there. There are the sides are beautiful. You have the lights, and then you have this, for instance, you have the Tara and Pudan performing, which is quite spectacular. And then you have and it usually ends with fireworks, which is again quite a splendid display. Um, so as you see, what happens is that everything about the atmosphere, whether it's the landscape, whether it's the culture, the living culture, which is the food, the performances, the dance forms, the music, everything about it lends itself to storytelling. And what I'd like to do before I finish is to read a tiny excerpt from a book of mine called Idris, which is pretty much built around the Mamangam, which is something that Arun is going to refer to in his discussion. So this is a historical novel, and this is set in the 17th century. So what I'm reading is just a small excerpt linking the river and everything that we've been talking until now. The river ran alongside. In that stretch, even the sluggish Nila became turbulent, bouncing over the rounded rocks with the youthfulness of a stream, curling and curving, and never for once hinting at the treacherous currents that would suck in even an able bodied swimmer and smash him against the jagged rocks that lay hidden in the depths, ripping his skin open and gouging out chunks of flesh as if he were no more than a palm fruit fallen into the waters. A row of steps hewn out of laterite stone led to the river. Idris sat on one, watching a kingfisher that perched on a low hanging branch. Suddenly, it flew towards the river, dived, and rose with a small fish in its beak. Idris smiled at the valiance of the little brown and blue aerial warrior. Focus, focus, that is the key. Ravuni Gurukul told his students, when you have that, all else will follow. The Kalari was on a higher ground from the river, facing east as it was supposed to. It had been created by excavating the ground one coal deep. A coal was a unit of measurement that was about 2.5 feet. Idris had been told with some amusement. The earth that had been dug out, Ravani Gurukul explained, had been used to build the surrounding walls by about another coal from the ground. It was from these walls that the bamboo poles for the roof rose into the air. Idris entered the Kalari through an opening set in the center of the eastern side of the Kalari. This too had to be a precise width, one coal. A set of steps led down into the sunken floor of the Kalari. It was cool and airy inside, and the walls of the earth muffled all sound. He looked up and saw high above the steeply sloped roof of the Kalari made of plaited coconut palm leaves and supported on a frame of wooden slats and bamboo poles. There is a science to that as well, Ravuni Gurukul told him from the entrance of the Kalari. It should equal the width, and the Kalari should be located in the southwest or northwest corner of the land. It is the only way we can avoid the Mrityu Yogam. You see, every piece of ground has a certain predilection to cause accident or death. Idris swallowed. The sailors were guided by the stars. The farmers sought the stars for planning crops. But what science was this that used heights and depths, direction and wind to stave off destiny? He touched the rock hard walls and felt a strange excitement course through him as he thought of everything Kandavar would learn here.
Thank you, Anita.
Thanks, Gopi.
That was wonderful. So as we are also running short of time, I do not want Arun to miss out things that he has to tell us. So Arun, could you please take us through the work that you are doing as part of INTAC, as well as the trails that you run along Valluvanad? Yeah, and we are also getting...
Just interrupt in a moment, Gopi, to tell Arun that we'll really need to push the speed, because I don't want the viewers to miss out on all the information that you have brought for them. So,
yeah, I'll try to be as fast as I can.
Thanks, Arun.
Can you
Thanks.
hear me and see me?
Loud and clear.
Excellent. So I have a presentation, and I'll talk in the background. So I'm not here as a tourism professional. I'm a volunteer. I'm a heritage activist, and we're part of a team that works in the region. So, but at the same time, the reason we work in the heritage sector is because we love the places we are from. So when we're asked to talk about our own place, and if it's a place that we love, and it's as blessed as the one I live in, we become effusive, often lyrical. There is so much that we want the other person to know. We take great pride in their delight of our heaven. So in Malayalam we have this phrase. I'm sure there are similar usages elsewhere too. We say when somebody talks about something that he's proud of, you say it's equivalent of having 1,000 tongue. So you're effusive, you're endless, you're verbose, and so on. So when Gopi asked me to talk about this session, it's an image that came to mind. So this is a little illustration that a colleague drew for me. I live in a village barely. So the map where you can see the little pointer. This is where I am right now. It's a small village which is about 10 minutes on a bicycle from the river Gayatri, which is one of the tributaries that forms the river Nila. If I look past my computer screen straight ahead, I can actually see the Annamalai hills from where the river originates. If I were to take my Jeep and drive through a small rural road, this road that you're seeing now, I would reach the foot of the hills in less than 10 minutes. And I would want to talk to you about so many things about the place and the sights that you see, about each time of the day, each part of the year, and so on. And this is the nature of the thing, that we become very loquacious about the places we love. So this is a road that's just outside my village. And it is it's a rice growing region.
Arun, we are unable to see the presentation.
Oh, you're unable to see the presentation.
Yeah, if you could just go on the share screen, please.
Okay. I'm so sorry about that.
Not a problem.
Can you see it now?
No, what we see is still your picture.
Okay, that can't be helpful. I get a message which says that the host has disabled my screen sharing. Could that be enabled?
I'll just send a message to the NEGD.
Yeah.
You can keep talking.
In the meanwhile, I'll just continue talking.
Go ahead.
So I was talking about.
Yeah. I think you can
sorry?
share it. Go ahead and try doing it again.
Yeah. So essentially, I was telling you that we all, in the series that we've seen so far, in all of these places, we are on this webinar series because we love our places, and there is so much that we want people from outside to come, and people from within the state to come and see and enjoy, and we take special privilege, pride in showing them these places, our secret discoveries, and so on. And that is what I'm also going to do today. And in a sense, that is also what we do. This is one of the things that we do through the Untitled Chapter here.
Yes, it's showing now. Yeah.
Okay, it's showing. Okay, so I'll just quickly do a recap. So this was what I started at, that metaphor of 1,000 tongue. 1,000 tongue would have been a very unpleasant image to draw. So she chose to have a very long tongue, which also approximates a sort of circuit. So there's so many things that we want to talk about. This is where I am right now. This is my village, and you can see the entire Nila Delta here. So it more or less starts from the green bits, which are the mountains. The river originates a little to the right of where that red marker is, and then it goes all the way to the ocean. I think Gopi's already covered that part. And these are a few images of where I live and the kind of place. So the burden of all that I'm saying is that we live in a very pretty place, and you must forgive us for being verbose and being very moderate in our sort of appreciation of these places. Now, one of the things that, but given the format of a webinar, we need to sort of be economical, and I was thinking what is it that would sort of distill the idea of who we are. And one thing that I think we are is in terms of the geography, there is great diversity. We have hills, and we have streams, and we have I want to talk to you about the culture that we have, which is very simple, vibrant. There is a certain restraint to it. There are festivals that I'd want to talk to you about. Our villages are very beautiful. Our architecture, especially our wooden architecture, is very sophisticated. It's one of the best things about our part of the world. Our food, you'd be surprised. Anita just talked about food, but you'd be surprised with the variety of flavors in our food traditions. Anita just showed you what might seem like a quintessential Kerala Sadhya, but within the Kerala Sadhya tradition, there are so many variations. We have wonderful beverage traditions. So I would love to take you on so many journeys. Whoever is on this webinar, I'd love to take you on so many journeys. And that is exactly what we do through a program of tours that the local Untitled chapter has. We take people to places, we talk about their stories, we connect places, legends, and experiences, and make people fall in love with our world. So this is how our tours sort of function. This is a sort of slightly distorted view of the river and the river basin, and this is the world in which our tours generally function. I am part of India's premier heritage conservation body, the Indian National Trust for Arts and Cultural Heritage. It's called INTAG. I'm a volunteer member in Palakkad. We are not tourism experts, as I told you, but our team conducts tours which we feel are quite special. I can't talk about all that we do, but I'm going to talk about, time permitting, I'm going to talk about 2 tours that we have done in the past. One is a tour that is about a kingdom, a middle-aged kingdom that vanished over 100 years back. And its stories. Anita briefly touched about an incident that marked that saga. I'm also going to talk about a food tour that we did. Now, these tours, because now in reality, these tours were not a single tour. They were conducted as a series of tours. But since we are online and things move faster on the internet, I'm going to we're going to take some liberties and crunch it all into one quick narrative. So the place, the kingdom that Ita was referring to was called Varluvanad. This was one of many small principalities that took shape in what is today Kerala in the aftermath of the demise of the Chera Empire in the 12th century. So let's just get into this tour. So our tours are coach tours. They are one-day coach tours. So typically they start early in the morning, but very often people who come and attend our tours, we help them find a nice accommodation. So there might be a beautiful homestay, and these are all partners that we want to sort of flourish. So very often our tour participants would live in a house like the one you're seeing. You would, if you were to come to this tour, this would be the sort of place that we would urge you to stay in, because that adds richness to your experience. You'd need to start early in the morning. We would even help you with a cab, a heritage cab of the sort that has vanished from many parts of India. You will pass through lovely landscapes, and our tour would start at about 7 in the morning from the center of Palakkad town. You would meet wonderful people. This is one of our great payoffs of the tours. We meet lovely people through the day. We start on time usually, and soon after we serve home cooked meals, local meals within the bus. And one of the first things that we would do is some form of interpretation of the historic context in which these tours operate. So, so when you join us, we would have an expert historian who will tell you about the context in which the Valluvanad kingdom emerged in the Middle Ages. He'll tell you vignettes about how Kerala was divided into small principalities and how the Valluvanad kings were the preeminent power at the time. And then we would probably go to a site which a historic temple where we have these relics of 12th century stone temples. They are built at a time when present day Kerala was contested by the great Tamil empires. We'll try to piece together the history of that period through various stylistic references. Everywhere there are so many wonderful little details, and we are very loquacious talking about them. Moving on, we would also touch on the on a period in the Middle Ages when merchants, Jain merchants who traded with the ports of the West, used to use these routes. Gopi mentioned about the Palghat Gap. So there was a trade route that passed through the way, and we had, and thanks to the Jain merchants who frequented that the pass and that route, we had a period when Jainism was very flourished in this part of the world, and we have some remnants which speak of that period. Through the journey, we would be passing, because as I'd spoken earlier, we would be traveling almost in parallel with the river. There are many points at which we would want you to stop, take a look at the river, each place, the stories, and moving on, we would go to two very important Brahmin villages. There were these very great Brahmin villages that through the Middle Ages were the powers behind the throne, as it were, amongst the rulers of Kerala. And the most important one among them were called Panniyur and Shukapuram. One was Vaishnavite, Panniyur was Vaishnavite, and Shukapuram was Shaivite. These are two of the oldest temples in Kerala, well over 1,000 years old. And those temples, they had a doctrinal sort of schism. They had a conflict which involved all the kings of South India. They took sides, and it was a very the conflict was very degenerate often, and that was a conflict in which the Vallonad kings took one side, and by then the Zamorin's through their sort of newfound prestige with the European trade was sort of elbowing the Vallonad kings for the status of becoming the preeminent power in Kerala. So this battle was an epic, and I think that's what Anita was also referring to. But these temples in themselves are wonderful temples. So this is something that we would want to show you. We would further go on to the places where these battles took place, and as you're all aware, Kerala has this martial tradition of which today we recognize the almost performance form of Kalaripaita, but back in the day it was a martial form. It was how people fought their battles. So I would want to take you to one of the places where one of the most scintillating battles took place. I would set up a little performance for you where you would get a sense of what a battle back in the Middle Ages would have been like. Moving on, by then it would more or less be time for lunch, and there would be wonderful lunch for you, which would be cooked by a cook from the region, especially put together fair, wonderfully presented. It will be a memorable experience. And after lunch, we would move on to the historic port of Ponnani. Gopi briefly mentioned it. Ponnani was a very important port back in the day. It was a port equally for trade and as a naval port. And the Marikkar seamen, the Muslim seamen, have a long history of being loyal to the Zamorins, and their presence during this war was very decisive in its eventual outcome. So we would go there, and further we would visit some of the great mosques there, and you will notice that the mosques and the temples in Kerala look alike because they share the same craftspeople, and they also speak of a long culture of syncretism that we've had in the state. We would understand the Mopala culture a little bit further. It's a very richly layered culture. Further, we would move, and after I just mentioned that there was this great battle between the Zamorins forces and Vallonad forces for determined dominance, and at the end of which the Vallonad forces retreated. And there was generally a belief that this was achieved, this outcome that the Zamorin's won the place as the preeminent kings was achieved not by the most scrupulous or ethical of means. So there, after that, the story becomes even more interesting. Something happened which hasn't happened probably anywhere in the world. For the next 400 years, there were a group of nobles in Wallonard who every 12 years, when a great festival would take place, every 12 years, a bunch of assassin warriors whose more or less whose purpose in life was to sort of charge on the Zamorin at this great festival and try to assassinate him. And this was a cult of which the only parallel that most of you could probably think of would be the Bushido warriors in Japan. They were a cult of assassins, and it lasted for 400 years. Not once were they successful in killing a Zamorin, but there are and because it was a cult, there were wonderful, wonderful isn't the right word. There were these remarkable rituals connected with that event where they would try and redeem lost glory by trying to assassinate the Zamorin. So there are many places connected with that. I would want to take you there. There were many people who are connected with those families from which those warriors came. Talking to them, you get a sense of the code that drove these people to do that, the code which makes sense in the context of the Middle Ages, but probably a little less today.
Arun, I'm going to be intervening and reminding that we are past our official time. So
okay.
Something really quick that you want to say, because we have less than 5 minutes to wind up.
Okay. I just mentioned about, this is one of the type of tours that we do, and they take in all sorts of things. Gopi has given a wonderful, very evocative introduction. So most of what I say is supportive of that. It is essentially a cultural destination. The Nila Basin is a cultural destination, and there's a wonderful wealth of riches, be it architecture, be it the performing arts, cuisine, music, etc. And we try to bring them alive by invoking the stories that underpin them. And suddenly culture and history come alive. And that is what we did with this tour. And I will very quickly talk about something else which we all love, which is food. And we are a nation of food lovers. So this other tour that I want to talk about is a food tour. And we are interested in food tours because it is linked to the fact that we are an agricultural region. And like in the rest of the country, agriculture is going through crises. And we feel that more people talking about it, visiting the farmers, understanding the issues, being partners to what they do, would offer hints on how farming could survive into the future. So we do these food tours, which is all about great produce, about local recipes, wonderful small production sort of kitchens that produce almost on an artisanal basis. These are all themes that you see happening in other parts of the world. And these are things that we want to support. So our food tours essentially try to support that paradigm. So we talk about agriculture, we talk about the link between the agriculture and food, which is a link that we have forgotten. Rice is the core of who we are. And in rice, there are issues of how seeds are being lost and seed monopolies sort of work with an effect that local sort of seed wisdoms have been lost. There are people working in the face of that to regain community ownership of seeds. So these are all things that concern us, and we will talk with great passion. And our partners in each of these places will make you fall in love with that world. You would think that their world is tedious, the farmer's world is exhausting, it is dreary, but then it's not. It's full of so many wonderful things. And we would open up that world to you. So we do things like.
I'm sorry to interrupt again, but as we are looking at it, and we are getting a lot of viewer suggestions also, that why don't we do one whole webinar on the food traditions of your amazing state? Would you be game for that?
Yes,
sure.
Anytime.
We're game for anything that brings attention to our region.
I'm afraid we are going to get logged off. Technology viewers comes in the way. If this was a live program, we would have just gone on. But because technology platforms need to be switched off, and therefore I'm afraid I'm being rude but interrupting right in the middle of it all. When we started this webinar, we knew we are going to be short on time, but we were committed to the 1 hour slot. So I do want to do a couple of announcements, because in all my excitement of traveling my country, I forget to remind sometimes that we're going to be coming back to you viewers on the 12th, which is a Tuesday at 11 a.m. And going from Kerala, we're going to take a boat or a ship and go all the way on the eastern coast of India and take you up to Odisha. So that's what's coming on Tuesday. But before we sign off today, there is one question which has come many times, and therefore I do want to ask the three panelists on that. But the other thing I also want to remind viewers is the Dekho Apna Desh logo contest is on. It's on till the 16th. Please log on to MyGov, send in your thoughts on what do you think our logo would do justification to our amazing, incredible country. Send the logo. We have a prize for you in that. And also, keep yourself safe and healthy. A question, all of you, why is Nila, or Bharatapuja, as it is also known, why is it Nila? One of you want to take that very quickly.
Why the name Nila?
Yes.
Well, I was actually responding to some of the questions here in the chat. The real, or how the river is identified, it's Bharatapura. But then, depending upon different regions, depending upon the influence of the literature, different locations also based on the tributaries have different names. It's in this Valluvanad area, which is mostly, the cross section of a little bit of Trichur, little bit of Malappuram and Palakkad region, where it's more popular as Nila. I do not, we have actually explored a lot about why that particular name, but most of the time the responses that we got from people are like, it is mostly about a poetic way of calling it.
Okay, thank you so much.
So especially in writers like M.T. Vasudevan Nair, he's been constantly writing about Nila as a...
All right. Anita, a quick question for you. A lot of viewers ask that this whole area finds mention in the two epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. So can we have a whole session therefore on food from that region? Arun and Anita, can you have a whole tale telling around that tradition of that whole area? A few quick thoughts from you. Yeah, I think Anita's on mute.
Okay. Yeah. Can you see me?
Yes.
Yeah.
We can
Yeah.
see you.
Pretty much. What I wanted to say is yes, of course. But I think the best storyteller in this group is Gopi. He's the one who knows all the, the ancient stories and everything. What I know is more contemporary in that sense. So sure, I'd be very happy to pitch in and talk about the stories and definitely about the food, of course.
Great. So viewers, thank you once again for encouraging us, logging on. And as always, I think we run short of time. That tells you how beautiful our country is. So देखिए अपना देश, अभी घर से देखिए और बाद में travel करिए. For now, Namaskaram. Thank you, NEGD, for supporting us. Thank you, Anita, Arun, and Gopi. It's been an amazing journey in the river Nila. Goodbye to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.